Okay. So again, my name is Cato. I work in the Career Development Center, more specifically student employment and internships, but we've got some of our career coaches, our employer relations team with us, Laura Pell, who is the career coach over the College of Arts and Science, and we also have Jennifer Perry, who is our career coach over Beaver College of Health Science, and then Geraldine Mitchell as well with us, who is our career coach over, sorry, Geraldine, my mind is not working today. Help me out.
The College of Fine and Applied Arts and the School of Music.
Thank you. Thank you. So for any of our students or our recent alum that would like to schedule a meeting with the three of them, you can do that through Handshake. I am now going to introduce Jared Thompson, one of our officers from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. We're also joined over the phone by Lieutenant Dutton, who oversees training. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him and share our presentation that we've put together for you all. Here you go.
See myself in here. Let me kind of square up.
Here, let me see really quickly for you. There you go.
Awesome.
All right, well, take it away, Officer Thompson.
All right, so welcome everyone. This is the presentation on careers in wildlife law enforcement. I just want to thank you for your interest in attending today. My name is Jared Thompson. I'm a wildlife law enforcement officer with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission Law Enforcement Division. Like I said, I'm a wildlife officer, but also known as a game warden, more commonly known to folks by that title. Before we get started, I just want to thank the Career Development Center at Appalachian State for inviting me today and for allowing me to have this opportunity to talk to students and kind of just share a bit about what I do and some other careers in natural resources, law enforcement. I'm honored to have this opportunity to speak to the students and the faculty and staff at Appalachian State. That's my alma mater. Graduated from AppState, and we're going to get into some more of the details there later. But I just want to appreciate everybody who decided to attend today. Hopefully at some point in the future, I'd like to come to campus in person and speak to some of the students either in a classroom setting or at one of the Career Development Center events. But in the meantime, we're going to have to just settle for it this way. Hope everyone is staying safe. Everybody's doing all right. Like I said, hopefully we'll get to visit with some of you all in the future. Hopefully today, it's my hope that I can provide some of you with some information that could possibly help in deciding your career path. College is a very exciting time. There's lots of great opportunities out there, especially in the field of law enforcement. And as I stated, it's my hope that I can share some of that with you all today. Before we get started here, I just want to say, ask everyone who's checking in with us today, go ahead and mute your microphones and turn your camera off as well. That's just going to help me stay focused and concentrate so I don't get distracted. But if you could, please hold all your questions until the end. And there's a chat box, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, there's going to be a chat box, and I'll address those questions towards the end, at least to the best of my ability. As I said, just hold your questions to the end, make a note of them, and I'll make sure to come back and address those. All right, so let's get started. You can see I am a fellow Mountaineer. Graduated in 2013 with my bachelor's degree in criminal justice with my major. Minored in sociology, which those of you who are criminal justice majors, you know how that goes, where you have so many credits by the time you get towards the end of your college career that all you got to do is take a couple more classes and go ahead and minor in sociology, which in my case, it was sociology or psychology. Just take a few more credit hours and you come out with a minor. But it was sociology was the way that it went for me. I am a third generation Mountaineer. Both my dad and my granddad both were AppState grads. And see, my granddad's back in the day before it was AppState, it was Appalachian State Teaching College. But a little bit about me on my background. I was born and raised in Sanford, North Carolina. That's Lee County. It's in the Piedmont, down the center of our state, kind of near south of Raleigh, north of Fayetteville, if that gives you an idea of geography. And from a young age, I grew up in the outdoors. Always grew up hunting, fishing, hiking, camping. I loved the outdoors, loved nature and wildlife. And my father was a law enforcement officer as well. So since I was young, I always knew that I wanted to work in the field of law enforcement. And so you can imagine when I discovered there was a career that combined hunting and fishing in law enforcement. And that's a game warden. That's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. So as I stated, after high school, applied to Appalachian State with the hopes of getting accepted. And looking back, probably not too smart, but I was blessed and had faith. And AppState was the only college that I applied to, and I fortunately got accepted. So that worked out well, and graduated in 2013, bachelor's degree in criminal justice and minored in sociology. And so to kind of get you started on how my career path into wildlife law enforcement kind of began. Like I said, my dad worked in law enforcement. He's a police officer for 30 years. He actually met a federal wildlife officer who was just kind of passing through and needed to utilize their parking garage at his police department just to kind of leave his patrol vehicle there while he was en route to some training. So my dad met this federal wildlife officer who worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And interestingly enough, he was also an AppState grad. So they got to talking. He said, my son is an AppState student, has an interest in being a game warden. So that's how our connection got started. We started networking, talking about potential opportunities. And he actually invited me up to the Northeast region of our country, around Washington, D.C., to what's known as Poaching National Wildlife Refuge. It's an urban wildlife refuge just outside of D.C., near Baltimore, Maryland. And he said, just come on up on a law enforcement internship, work alongside our federal wildlife officers, and just kind of build some experience, see what they do on a daily basis. You have that opportunity to kind of shadow them in the field and what they do. And so in 2012, I was a junior at App, and I went up there and spent the entire summer from May to August up there working every day alongside federal wildlife officers on the refuge. In addition to this, it was a great opportunity to get out and really learn a lot about law enforcement. Other than growing up with my father and doing ride-alongs with his department, it was my first real exposure in the field. And I was around Washington, D.C. There's dozens and dozens of law enforcement agencies up there. Worked alongside United States Park Police, the Capitol Police, like lots of law enforcement agencies in and around D.C., in addition to the federal wildlife officers with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So it was a great time. Came back to school for my senior year, and the summer after, I guess, my senior year, I had to finish my criminal justice internship as required to obtain your degree. And I, of course, did my internship with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But this time I went to Chincoteague National Wildlife Refuge, which is an island. Assateague, Chincoteague, it's a national seashore. It's an island just off of the eastern shore of Virginia, to the east of Chesapeake Bay, that region. And once again, I was working alongside federal wildlife officers, U.S. park rangers with the National Park Service, U.S. Coast Guard, Virginia Marine Resources Commission, Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, just immersed in this, field of law enforcement officers within natural resources law enforcement. And that was a great opportunity for me. Obviously got a lot of great experience, not only for the internship, as it was required, but also for myself and kind of deciding which direction I wanted to go. So at the time, that was my college internship through Appalachian State. When I went through that, there was a program that was offered by the federal government. It was called SCEP, so SCEP, Student Career Experience Program. or STEP, Student Temporary Experience Program. That's no longer a program. It has since been replaced by the Pathways program, Pathways, Pathways, Pathways program. And I wasn't a part of the program because I was just doing my internship through Appalachian State and working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But the reason why I bring this up is the Pathways program is an opportunity that is specifically offered to students and recent graduates, where you apply through the program and you work and you do this, whatever your job is. It doesn't have to be law enforcement. It could be, an engineering job. It can be a medical job. But through the federal government, whatever agency it is, you work as a student, and when you obtain your degree, they basically have a federal job waiting for you. That's called the Pathways program. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but you can go on to usajobs.gov and look for those Pathways programs. Like I said, they have them for law enforcement officers. They have them for the Secret Service. They have them for FBI. They have all kinds of opportunities through the Pathways program. But like I said, I wasn't a part of that program. It was just starting out whenever I came on, and so I wasn't eligible at the time. But and I haven't seen on USA Jobs recently. But just kind of keep an eye on that. There are some jobs that I said that they are law enforcement related. Other jobs, it could be a biology job, Pathways program, or what have you. So 2000, let me back up. So that was 2013 during my internship with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I was, obviously talking to the guys I was working with, those federal wildlife officers. And basically I said to them, how do I become a federal wildlife officer? And what they told me was, outside of the Pathways program, if you had the opportunity to take that route, which I didn't, what most people do, because it's so competitive, that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service very rarely hires directly into a federal wildlife officer position. What most people do is join another agency first, say like the National Park Service, and then work their way up, build some experience, and then lateral their way over into U.S. Fish and Wildlife or whatever other agency they're interested in. So I said, what does that mean for me? And they said, you need to go through the Seasonal Law Enforcement Training Academy and become a U.S. Park Ranger, work for a little while, build your experience up till you get a permanent full-time status, and then lateral into U.S. Fish and Wildlife or wherever you have your interest. So that's what I did. After I graduated from App in 2013, applied for the Seasonal Law Enforcement Training Academy, which is the one I went to. It's actually held at Southwestern Community College in Franklin, North Carolina. That's Macon County, the western tip of our state there near like Georgia area. And the Seasonal Academy is short, what we call it. The Seasonal Academy is basically like BLET, basic law enforcement training for the state, but on the federal level. So what they do is they train you up the same type of skills that you would get in your BLET, combatives, firearms, driving, law, and stuff like that. And then they throw in the park ranger stuff that you need to know for that as well. So it's at Southwestern Community College, and you're taking that course, although it's sponsored through them. It is a federal law enforcement training center, FLETC is what they call it, accredited program. So what they call it is actually FLETA, Federal Law Enforcement Training Accredited Program, that is basically just hosted through Southwestern Community College. That they have park rangers come in, they have other federal law enforcement officers come in, and that's who's training you. So you're not getting your state basic law enforcement training like you would need for your sheriff or police department or highway patrol. You're getting seasonal law enforcement training. So when you graduate, you hold a certification that allows you to apply as a U.S. Park Ranger for seasonal positions through the National Park Service throughout the United States. So just because you complete the training, it does not mean that you're automatically hired. It means that you now hold a certification that gives you an opportunity to apply for these positions. The way the seasonal program works is, and don't quote me on these numbers, say there's 300 National Park Service sites throughout the nation. Of all of those, they only have a limited number of permanent full-time park rangers. So what they do is supplement their law enforcement staff with seasonals. And seasonals come, you'll work a season, say a summer season, May, June, July, August, that's your summer. And then a winter season is September, October, November, December, and so on. So you're working seasons and traveling around the nation, getting experience at different parks. And you do that basically until you either get picked up by the National Park Service or by another agency. So you can see how that would be very appealing for a young professional just graduated from college who has an interest in law enforcement. You're constantly moving, you're traveling the country. You get to see the country, see a lot of different people. It's an amazing experience. And so the way it works is once you graduate your seasonal law enforcement training, with that program at Southwestern, you graduate, or I graduated with my National Registry of Emergency Medical Technician. So that's your EMT, as well as your wildland firefighter certification. And those are things that you're going to utilize as a park ranger, working for the National Park Service. So it's a great program. You come out with your law enforcement certification, fire, and EMT. And so the seasonal gig is great. Like I said, you get to travel, you're making good money, you're getting to see the country, you're getting a lot of experience as a law enforcement officer, incredible opportunity. And I'd highly recommend it. It could be a complicated process. That's why I'd ask if you're interested, reach out to me. I'll give you some information at the end. But the reason why I want to spend so much time on that is because that was the foundation that I had built for myself, in addition to obtaining my bachelor's degree, was going to this seasonal park ranger academy, working for the National Park Service, and getting that experience. And I 100% attribute the combination of that and my bachelor's degree to getting this position as a state game warden today. That doesn't mean everyone has to do that. We have game wardens from all different walks of life, but just know that, you have that opportunity, you have that avenue where you could be a park ranger, you can be local law enforcement. And I'll get into some more of that later, but that was the route that I took, and it proved very beneficial for me. And it got me that law enforcement experience. It got me that training. I became an EMT, wildland firefighter, and that's what made me more marketable in such a competitive career field. And those things are things that you'll take and use throughout the rest of your career in law enforcement. So I know I spent a little bit of time on that, but I can come back, speak more about it later. If you have questions on it, write them down. Just put them in the chat box. We'll talk towards the end.
And we have also shared the Pathways program link in the chat for any students that want to do more research on lots of different agencies within the federal government and lots of different pathway programs, whether it be in a law enforcement track or non-law enforcement, because we do acknowledge we might have some environmental science or biology students maybe joining us or watching this later as well too. Right.
So like I said, I'll talk more about the seasonal process if you'd like me to a little bit later. But this is leading into the more present day. When I graduated from the seasonal academy, it was 2014. First of all, I applied all over the nation, from Florida to Maine, California, Alaska, Hawaii, all over the nation, every national park. And I wasn't getting a lot of hits back at the time because also very competitive. And I myself am not a U.S. military veteran, but U.S. military veterans within the federal government, especially law enforcement, had veterans preference. So without me being a veteran, they were offering a lot of those positions to veterans first. And I appreciate veterans, and thank you for your service if you are a vet. But it was difficult for me at first and discouraging because I was applying and not getting accepted. And I kept applying, and eventually got a call from Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. And first offer I got, immediately took it. And within a week later, I probably had a dozen more offers all around the country. But I turned them down because I wanted to be loyal to the first part that I agreed to come to, which was a great decision for me. I didn't know anything about the area, but the time that I was in North Dakota was during the peak of the oil boom out there, and it was the Wild West. It was like the gold rush times, if you can imagine that point in our nation's history. So as you can imagine, I got a lot of law enforcement experience, fire and EMT experience very quickly. I mean, it was day one, hit the ground running. And so that's actually a picture of me that you can see there. And I've been on the job a few weeks, and I think I look cool. But I may look cool, but actually I'm issuing my wife, Kato, here. That's actually a Junior Ranger booklet. So that's not to downplay, like, you know, the seriousness of the job, but that's just because to show you that's stuff that we do as well. You know, that's part of not only, you know, deputizing your Junior Ranger wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, but, you know, that's just some fun stuff we do with the job as well, interacting with the public relations. But like I said, had a great time out there. While I was out west, I acknowledged that it was seasonal position. I was already applying to the next winter season openings for parks all around the nation. Wasn't hearing much back. Was also starting to apply to state law enforcement, state wildlife law enforcement agencies. So I applied to like Montana game wardens, Maine, Maryland, Texas, Washington. I'd applied Florida, Virginia. I applied all over the nation for game warden academies. And was rolling down that path with them, entertaining some of the offers. Texas and Florida and Virginia, I went the farthest with. But about that time, I saw an advertisement for a North Carolina wildlife officer position and applied for it, that being my home state. I was missing home, missing my family, having a great time out west, but was, you know, interested in this opportunity. I said, hey, I acknowledge the fact that the seasonal gig is great and I can continue down this path, but it's always great to have backup options. So with the intent of, you know, continuing to pursue my goal of being a federal wildlife officer with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, I also acknowledge the fact that a state wildlife officer with the state of North Carolina is equally as important, equally as prestigious, you know, as a career. So I applied, and I was still out west at the time. Right, I applied, and I actually had to book a flight home to take the POPAT, the police officer physical agility test, and the reading test. And I think I flew back out west, worked some more. I believe I came back. I don't remember how the sequence was, but I had to come back, take the psychological eval, the swim test. So I was still working out west and coming home to pursue these opportunities. At the end of my season, I decided to come back to North Carolina and finish out the application process with North Carolina Wildlife, it's a very long, for those of you that may have applied already, it's a very long process. Lots of things to do over several months. I just figured it was better if I was here in person to, you know, try to be as efficient as possible in completing those steps. So fortunately, I was accepted to the 2015, which I believe was the 52nd Basic Wildlife Law Enforcement Training Academy. And it's 28 weeks of training in Salemburg, North Carolina. That's Sampson County. That's down kind of southeast of Fayetteville, between there and the coast. Not much around. A lot of agriculture and super hot. But got down there to the school. I'd already been through one law enforcement academy, so I kind of knew what to expect. I thought I did, at least. Without getting into too much of that, I don't want to ruin the fun for anyone who may be interested in applying. But I graduated from the Wildlife Officer Training School in 2015, and my first duty station assignment was I had field training in Brunswick and Columbus counties. So I was assigned to Brunswick, and my patrol area was Brunswick and Columbus. And that's down on the coast, so think just south of Wilmington, north of Myrtle Beach. I was thinking Brunswick County, it's all beaches. I'm thinking Ocean Isle Beach and Sunset Beach and beaches. That's only like less than 1% of Brunswick County. So
A lot of swamp.
it's a lot of swamps. It's a lot of just miles of fields. And, I'm thinking beaches, like, partying at the beaches. But that's not at all what it was like. We did work a little bit at the beach, but that's not a takeaway from the county at all. It was, people will tell you this if you go through our training, it was probably, if not the best 6 months of my career. And that's not to take away from the job now. Every day is a great day, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but awesome place. As far as being a game warden, awesome place. Anything you could want to work, deer hunting, duck hunting, bear hunting, dove hunting. There's literally boating. Obviously, you can imagine there's lots of water down there. There's a lot to do. Awesome place. So completed my 6 months of field training there. Loved it. Loved my training officer and had a blast. And there wasn't an opening down in that area at the time. So I had the opportunity to apply to several different positions, different counties throughout the state of North Carolina. And one that I applied to was Caldwell County, which is just south of Boone. So you think like Lenoir, Granite Falls, Hudson, that area. So I applied to Caldwell County thinking, hey, I loved it when I was in Boone. I loved AppState. If I could just get as close as possible, And doesn't happen often to come back to the mountains that quickly, but had an opportunity, and fortunately, I was granted the position in Caldwell County. And that was 2016. Worked in Caldwell County. That patrol area was Avery County, Burke County, and Caldwell County. And worked there for about a year and a half. And the officer in Avery County, which is kind of west of Boone, so you're thinking like Banner Elk, Grandfather Mountain, Sugar Mountain, that whole area. The officer in Avery County retired, so I lateraled into Avery County. Once again, just trying to get higher up on the mountain, trying to get closer to Boone, get back up to the high country, what we loved up there. And so from 2017 and 2019, I was the Avery County officer, and my patrol area was Avery, Burke, and Caldwell. In 2019, did some restructuring, and my patrol area shifted. So I stayed the Avery County officer, but my patrol area became Avery, Mitchell, Yancey, and McDowell counties. And at the time, I was a little reluctant to it because most people don't like change. But looking back now, it was the best thing that could have happened. It's been a blast over here. I love this patrol area. Love the guys I work with. Lots of activity. You could work, which we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you could work trout fishing, up on the mountain, come off the mountain, work the boat on Lake James. We could work some duck hunting, dove hunting, go up the mountain, work some bear hunting, turkey hunting. There's just lots of opportunities. Great place to work in the mountains. And that's not to take away from the rest of the state. Like I said, understand that I love working on the coast, and I love working in the mountains. And as I stated before, I grew up in the Piedmont of the state, so that's why I wasn't really interested in going back there. Also, great places to work, lots of activity, very, very fun for a game warden especially. But like I said, I either wanted to be on the coast or in the mountains, and ended up in the mountains, fortunately, for me, for us. So that was the last 6 years or 7, 8 years, kind of in a nutshell. I know that took a while, but I wanted folks to kind of see my background because I think that's important to understand how, the steps that I took to get to where I am today, from college, from the internships to the seasonal school academy, working for the federal government as a law enforcement officer, and now the state government as a law enforcement officer. And so I think that's important when you're talking about your career development, right? You're talking about the career path that you're going to take to where you're going. You don't have to take my route. Everybody's got a different story of how they got to where they were, but just know that there are those opportunities out there, and these are just a few of the examples. Okay.
We also wanted to give Dutton an opportunity to share kind of his journey if he is still with us and available. Lieutenant Dutton, if you are there with us, wanted to share a little bit of your journey. We know that you're also an AppState graduate. You had a bit of a career change in sales management and marketing, insurance industry, and then came on with the Wildlife Resources Commission. A little bit later on. I'm not sure if he's there and available with us to be able to.
So Lieutenant Dutton is present, but he wasn't sure if he'd be able to talk at this time. But I know Lieutenant Dutton, and as I stated, he is the Director of Law Enforcement Training for our agency, which means that in addition to our in-service training, which is required for all current officers, he oversees the law enforcement recruit training at our basic law enforcement training academy at Salemburg that I mentioned earlier. So if some of you have already applied or will be applying in the future, you'll probably see Lieutenant Dutton at some point during the application process. Like I said, he's very busy right now with a lot of different stuff going on. Like I said, presently the lieutenant of the training division, as well as our telecommunications manager, which oversees our 24/7 law enforcement dispatch center located in Raleigh at headquarters. But just a brief background, as we stated, Lieutenant Dutton, he is a fellow mountaineer as well. And I'd like to take this opportunity to note that I was trying to count last night. I was laying in bed. And I think we have approximately at least 12 that I could count current wildlife officers who are AppState alumni. And so that's a great testament to a great school, and they all serve our agency very well, do their jobs very well. We love showing that Appalachian State Mountaineer pride, and we love that, you know, we all share that common background of having attended Appalachian State and knowing what it means to be a mountaineer, and then bringing that into our careers and the way we serve today. So as it says here, Lieutenant Dutton has his bachelor degree from Appalachian State, joined us in 1997, and worked as an officer in the field in Halifax County. And then after 8 years, became sergeant over Moore, Anson, and Richmond County. So that's actually close to where I grew up. And he was the sergeant there until 2018, whenever he was promoted and took over the role of the training director, like I said, of our law enforcement training for the agency. Okay, so on this page right here, I've written down my notes here. I just want to cover all. It doesn't look like much on the screen, but I want to break down some of this because I'm not sure where people's level is on understanding of the job and the position. So a few things. I'll start off by reading wildlife law enforcement officers, which that's me, game wardens, enforce state and federal game, fish, and boating laws within the state of North Carolina. This includes regulation of hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping. So when you say that, hunting, fishing, boating, trapping, that's what's known as our subject matter jurisdiction, okay? That's our, we're subject matter experts in state and federal game, fish, and boating laws. That's all things pertaining to hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping. So that's our primary job responsibility and our job duties. That's what a game warden does, right? But a game warden wears many hats, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But some other things I wrote down in addition to the regulation of hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping, it doesn't just end there. It's not just I do hunting, fishing, boating, trapping. That's all, nothing else. It's not like that. There's a lot of stuff that we do within the law enforcement realm, as well as things outside of the law enforcement realm. We have a very unique job. It's unlike any other. Some of the things I wrote down here, still pertaining to the outdoors and natural resources, is we deal with the plant poaching. So up here in the mountains specifically, like ginseng. Down east in Brunswick County, where I was stationed on the coast, deal with the poaching of Venus flytraps. Right, so there is an illegal market for the buying and selling of those plants, which are protected, and we deal with that. We also deal with herpetology or herps, and that's like the collecting and both legal and illegal poaching of you thinking about like your snakes and your turtles and that type of stuff. We deal with that as well. And so if you look at that picture there, that's actually Officer Barbosa. She's got a cage there that have a bunch of turtles in it, I believe, box turtles there that she had seized that were illegally harvested. And I think there's people were attempting to sell them. But that's just an example of stuff that we deal with. So going back to the hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping, what we call that is our regulated activities, right? So those are regulated activities that we enforce, and that's going to be on both public and private land and waters of this state. Okay, so people are like, oh, well, that means you only enforce hunting, fishing on game lands. No. So the way it works, without diving too deep, going down that rabbit hole, is, and there's no pun intended, but on public and private land, if any of our regulated activities are taking place there, that's hunting, fishing, boating, trapping, the plant poaching, the herps that I was talking about, any of that stuff, that's our subject matter jurisdiction on public and private lands. This means it's often in remote rural areas, often alone, but it could also mean in urban areas, inner cities, downtown. You may see a wildlife officer possibly, downtown Raleigh enforcing fishing regulations at a public fishing access area. So it's not outside the realm of possibilities to, you may be way out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness and see a game warden, or you may be in downtown Raleigh, and see a game warden there. So really we're all over the place. They say from Murphy to Manio, it's statewide jurisdiction. Even though we're assigned a primary county, a duty station, we have patrol areas. And even outside that patrol areas, we have the authority to enforce those laws statewide. So one thing I want to address really quickly is enforcement and enforcement versus education. So with our job, we do have enforcement authority. So as you can see, for those of you who don't know, we do carry handcuffs, so we have arrest authority, powers of arrest. But we also have the option of a citation authority, so issuing a ticket or even a warning for particular offenses. But the flip side of that, what's great about our job is our officer discretion and how we're able to use that in these situations and possibly educate the public. So a lot of what we do is enforcement. Majority of what we do is law enforcement, that we are law enforcement officers. But, we also have that unique opportunity to educate the public on using our state's natural resources, our wildlife resources, and those folks who are partaking in those regulated activities that we enforce, whether it be hunting, fishing, boating, trapping, what have you. We like to take that education, versus enforcement approach. So if you look down there, it says WLEOs, that's Wildlife Law Enforcement Officers. That's our official title, but we're commonly known as game wardens. Conduct boating and hunting safety educational programs. So we conduct boating safety education as required by state law, and as well as hunting safety education programs. And that's getting your hunters, they call it hunter safety, so that you can purchase a hunting license. So that's actually a picture of me there at a high school, teaching a hunter safety class at a high school down on the bottom right. It says, it says game wardens may take action in human versus wildlife interactions. And this one is an important part of our job, important aspect of our job that we deal with a lot. And I just want to make sure to cover this, is that, a lot of times we deal with these human wildlife interactions, specifically up here with me, a lot's a nuisance bear. We deal with nuisance bears a lot. And down on the coast, as you can see that picture right in the center there, that's when I was on field training in Brunswick County. They deal with a lot of alligators. So, bears and alligators, both regulated wildlife in the state of North Carolina. So we do deal with those whenever it's an issue between the public and wildlife. But we work a lot with our biologists and our wildlife management folks in these situations. We also work with our wildlife damage control agents in these situations. But I just wanted to make it clear that there's a misconception within the public, especially. We're not animal control, right? We're not dog catchers, what people say. Folks will call us about, hey, I've got squirrels in my attic. I've got, a possum under my house. And while I may respond, just because I'm a public servant and I want to address that person's concerns and I'll show them that we do care, I'll provide them with the resources to someone who could help them, because I'm not trained nor am I equipped to go in the attic and catch squirrels. So that's not necessarily something that we do. It's not one of our job responsibilities to go and catch these wild animals. In that situation with the alligator, it was a threat to public safety, so it had to be removed and then relocated and then re-released in the wild in a safe area. So that's a situation where we would intervene in a human versus wildlife interaction. And same thing with the nuisance bear. A lot of times with the bears, it's not something where I'm going to show up, tranquilize a bear, cage it, relocate it in the wild. Really, for me up here, what's most effective is educating the public on how to coexist and cohabitate, share the same area with wildlife. So that's an example of we may take action in human-wildlife interactions, but it is a part of our job duties. And lastly wildlife law enforcement officers assist with interagency operations. And so that could mean us assisting or working alongside law enforcement officers from lots of different law enforcement agencies. I'll give you some examples here. So locally, we work a lot with our sheriffs, deputies, and our police officers, and we assist them in all different types of situations. On the state level, work alongside of our brothers and sisters there in State Highway Patrol. We work with them, they work with us, as well as ALE, that's Alcohol Law Enforcement, which is now under the State Bureau of Investigation, SBI. But we work with both of them. It's a state agency. And then I wrote down a few that I commonly work with, that I have worked with, in my career. I've assisted the FBI and the EPA special agents on environmental offenses. When I was on the coast, we dealt with a major oil spill where someone was taking basically like leftover, they're pumping oil like from gas stations, taking it and then discarding the waste into the swamps on the game lands. So we work with the FBI and the EPA on that, which we'll talk about on the next slide, I think. You don't have to go forward. Yeah, the next slide. But we do work with other law enforcement agencies quite frequently, at least I do. I especially make it a point to have that interagency cooperation because, when we work with them, we help them, but when they work with us, they help us. And it works better that way. The more resources we have, we work better together. And I put a little note to the side. We have typically 1 to 2 officers per county, depending on the size of the county. But most of the time it'll be 1 officer per county. And, say that makes approximately, I don't know what the number is now, but approximately 180 to 200 officers throughout the entire state. That includes all command staff in Raleigh and headquarters, as well as the officers in the field. But, if you think about that, 1 officer per county, you're just 1 person. So, we have to rely upon these other agencies helping us. And same thing goes for them. They rely upon us helping them a lot of the times as well, because, of the unique skills that we possess and the resources that we bring to the table, whether it be, the plane, our boats, ATVs, our knowledge, our knowledge of the woods and stuff like that. One thing that I meant to put it up here, I didn't see it earlier, but in addition to the hunt, fishing, boating, trapping, which is our regulated activities, that's our subject matter jurisdiction. We also have the authority to enforce all criminal offenses committed in our presence. So that's how it's actually written into the law. So in addition to our subject matter jurisdiction, which I explained, of those regulated activities is the enforcement of criminal offenses committed in our presence. So we can, we're authorized to address that and handle that law enforcement situation as it arises. Go back one. It's okay. All right. I just want to break down a couple of these pictures. So the top left one there, that's one of our officers at a NASP program, that's National Archery in the Schools. So we go there, like I said, as part of the PR, as part of the hunter safety, using archery equipment safely. They're teaching students the importance and responsibility of handling a bow and arrow. Great, successful program, but we participate in that as well. And then the top right there, that's another one of Officer Barbosa and a North Carolina Marine Patrol officer. And I believe that looks like a dolphin, that they're trying to wrangle, maybe try to get it out of a net. But that's one of our law enforcement boats there, Bay Rider. So, yeah, those are just some examples of stuff that we do on a daily basis. Let's go to the next slide here. All right, so the reason I want to put this page in here is because there are lots of different natural resources, law enforcement agencies out there, whether it be state or federal law enforcement. And I think this is very important because a lot of times people are confused about the different jobs that there are. So they'll call us park rangers or park rangers game wardens or a forest ranger. And that's okay. We all have similar jobs, just different job titles. And so in my personal experience, I've experienced with the majority of these agencies here from both working with national parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then now working with North Carolina Wildlife. Like I said, I've worked with officers from most of these here. One thing I want to call to your attention is that all of these agencies have non-law enforcement roles, which is education, biological research, resource management. And with these agencies, understand that all of them are either natural resources agencies or like conservation agencies or preservation agencies that have a law enforcement division or a law enforcement component within that agency. So the National Park Service there, that's going to be your national parks, monuments, that's Blue Ridge Parkway, Great Smoky Mountains, Cape Hatteras National Seashore, that's national parks, right? That's Yellowstone, Yosemite, the iconic ones you're thinking of. And those are United States Park Rangers, federal park rangers. That's what I was as a seasonal. You're sworn, authorized the same as they are to enforce all those laws, as well as their special agents. The next one there, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they have jurisdiction on national wildlife refuges. But in addition to that, they are the federal governing authority over all migratory birds. So in addition to the national wildlife refuges, they enforce all migratory bird hunting. That's your ducks, geese, and waterfowl. And that's their federal wildlife officers and special agents. They have a bunch of different responsibilities in addition to the patrolling national wildlife refuges, and that's your hunting and fishing and boating, same as us, but federally they deal a lot with the wildlife trade, both national and international wildlife trafficking. They have wildlife officers and inspectors stationed at all major ports and airports. So they're dealing with a lot more of that on a federal level, that national and international wildlife enforcement. And our folks in areas where there are national wildlife refuges work alongside those federal wildlife officers closely as well. I want to go back to the Park Service. Where I am now in Avery County, I work very closely with my park rangers on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I work with those officers a lot. They assist me, I assist them, both on and off the parkway in the surrounding areas. So that's, like I said, it's all about that interagency cooperation. Next is U.S. Bureau of Land Management, and they regulate BLM lands, that's federal public lands, and it's mostly all out west. the Bureau of Land Management is mostly, entirely is all out west, western United States. And they have law enforcement officers, law enforcement rangers, and their own special agents. The one down below, U.S. Forest Service. Think of that, that's like Pisgah National Forest, Nantahala, the Uwharrie, Croatan. Those are national forests, okay? And they have their own law enforcement division. It's, their law enforcement officers and their special agents. And I work probably most closely with the U.S. Forest Service officer here in my area, because all the Pisgah National Forest, all the national forest doubles as state game land as well. So we have concurrent jurisdiction. We share jurisdiction on all that property. It's game land, so people can hunt, people can fish, people can boat on that public land. So I work with our Forest Service law enforcement officer a good bit around here. Next is North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. That's going to be our Marine Patrol officers and their enforcement of the coastal fisheries. That's the saltwater fishing, both commercial and recreational on the coast of North Carolina. And when I was in Brunswick, I worked with those officers a good bit down there. And I know that our officers that are stationed down there, they work alongside of the Marine Patrol officers as well as the United States Coast Guard, maritime enforcement. So that's one of the other state natural resources law enforcement agencies that you have a potential option to look into. And like I said, they're all down on the eastern part of the state on the coast. And then the last one there, North Carolina Division of Parks and Recreation. That's our state parks and state natural areas. And that's our state park rangers, okay? So the park rangers have jurisdiction on the parks. And once again, up here where I am, I work with, in addition to the U.S. Forest Service, I work with our North Carolina State Park Rangers a good bit. I have Grandfather Mountain State Park and Yellow Mountain State Natural Area. And I'll work with those officers a lot as well, assisting them, supplementing, supporting their law enforcement operations, whether it's ginseng, poaching, fishing, hunting within the park, stuff like that. There's two more that we didn't put on here, ran out of room, but I do want to mention them. Is NOAA. It's a federal agency. It's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and they have their own law enforcement division that specifically focuses on fisheries. So they have law enforcement officers and special agents that work for NOAA. And they are federal marine resource law enforcement officers, and they look into both recreational and commercial inspections of marine fisheries. So you're thinking that's like out on the ocean. They have a lot of NOAA law enforcement officers in Alaska and places where the fisheries are really heavily concentrated and commercialized. There is a NOAA law enforcement officer station, I think, out of maybe like Virginia Beach area. And there's one, I think, on the Outer Banks here. And then I think there's another one down around maybe like Myrtle or Charleston, I think, actually. But yeah, so that's kind of like the federal agency. It could be compared to North Carolina Marine Patrol. And then lastly is North Carolina Forest Service. They don't have a law enforcement division, but they have individuals who are sworn and commissioned law enforcement officers, and they are authorized to enforce timber theft and investigate wildfire, arson. I've worked with them before on some timber theft off of our game lands, but that's just two more there. So NOAA and the NC Forest Service as well. All right, we're back. So we come up with a few of these questions just for me to address, and it says, how do wildlife law enforcement officers' responsibilities differ from other law enforcement agencies? And that's your city police, county sheriff, and state troopers. So once again, going back to our subject matter jurisdiction, hunting, fishing, boating, trapping, plants, etc. That's obviously how we're different up front, right? So we enforce that stuff whereas they enforce more of the, I guess you would call your traditional law enforcement, whether it's your traffic enforcement, and things of that sort. So that's how we're different immediately, up front. But just know that in addition to our subject matter jurisdiction, our regulated activities, we are also capable of and very commonly enforce those traditional law enforcement duties. Although it's not part of our primary responsibility or primary duties, you still deal with that stuff. Whether that be your enforcement of drugs, alcohol. Sometimes you deal with domestics. You have a domestic situation that we have to deal with. Vehicle break-ins. I've worked with officers. They need somebody to sit in the woods and watch for a string of vehicle break-ins. Right. We deal with the occasional traffic enforcement. Although, like I said, we don't do that a whole lot. But if it is a public safety issue, whether it's DWI or careless and reckless or something along that lines, we will deal with that because, like I said, we are state law enforcement officers. If it's a public safety threat, we deal with that as well. So on a day-to-day basis, our job duties, they vary greatly. There's a lot of the hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping, but there's a little bit of everything else that we deal with as well. One thing I put to the side is that game wardens are members of the community, and we're not 24/7, 365 in that, we do have a set schedule, but we're issued a state cell phone and we get calls off duty and we're confronted off duty whenever we're at restaurants or the grocery stores or in public. And, whether it just be a question or a report, I feel like we're different than, a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, or trooper in that way, because we are members of the community, right? You're one person who's assigned to a county or a patrol area. And so I feel like that's how we differ from, your more traditional law enforcement agencies where they're answering calls for service. And although we get calls for service, for the most part, their day ends when their shift begins. But a lot of times for us, it really does become a 24/7, 365. It's a lifestyle. It's answering those calls late at night, getting caught out late in the night for a violation in progress. And, if I don't go, then no one's going to go because I'm the only officer in my county. So that's how we're different from those other law enforcement agencies. If they get a call, they'll send an officer, whereas with us, if we get a call and I don't answer it, no one's going. So that's why I think it's very important to recognize and realize that it's not one of those things where, oh, my shift's over, like done with that. And granted, the fact that we have our phones and our numbers are made public, available to the public, we do that for a reason, because we are a resource within the community, whether it's just somebody calling about a question or someone calling about a violation report. And I think we're unique in that regard. Next, how do wildlife law enforcement officers differ from other natural resource law enforcement agencies? So park rangers there generally operate within their specific assigned park. So outside of the park, they don't have any law enforcement or jurisdiction or authority. And that's not to say that, if they're in public and see somebody robbing a store, they can't take action. That's not what I mean. But generally, they're assigned to a specific park. Same thing with the Forest Service. They're generally assigned to a forest. And I work very closely alongside both of them, and I've been a park ranger before, so I can speak directly to this. When you're in your park or when you're in your national forest, you are the one. That's everything that happens there. That's you deal with all of it. That's you. But outside of that, they don't have any enforcement authority outside of that. So both awesome jobs, great jobs. I love being a park ranger. And, that's not to take away from their enforcement authority, but it's just one thing to keep in mind that when you're in your park or your respective forest, that you are the one who enforces all the laws and everything there, that everything. Whereas, with us, like I said, we do have statewide jurisdiction and authority, even though we're assigned to a particular county or patrol area, but we do have that option to enforce the law statewide. And Marine Patrol, they are, like I said, generally only in the coastal waters. That's going to be the saltwater portions of our state down east. So we all have similar jobs in that we work natural resources law enforcement. We're working in the outdoors. We're working with fish. We're working with wildlife. That's how they're very similar jobs. And a lot of times we wear a similar uniform. It's green, and people just like, oh, he's wearing something green, and he has a badge, park ranger. So we're all very similar. We have similar jobs, but within our own respective jurisdictions. Next is, what are some common situations that wildlife law enforcement officers encounter in the field? And if I can show you this here, I wrote the whole entire page because I started with a few, and I was like, oh, what about this and this and this? So it goes to show you that we have a lot of situations that we deal with, and literally we can do dozens of different things within one shift in just one day. I'll give you some examples here in a minute, but common situations as a game warden, we're going to be enforcing those hunting and fishing laws. So with hunting, it could be a closed season hunting report, over the limit. It could be illegal baiting where there's duck bait, turkey bait, bear bait, stuff like that. Fishing is the same thing. It could be a closed season fishing report, over the limit, that they've caught too many fish over the limit, or undersized fish, or, different fishing regulations like that. We deal with, most commonly during deer hunting season, what we call night deer hunting, spotlighting for deer, which is illegal, working with those nighttime operations, and I wrote up at the top, but I skipped over it. Our job is unique in that we do conduct the routine patrol. Routine, not supposed to say routine, but that's your routine compliance checks for licenses. People are like, oh, you're just not checking license. But we're also investigators, which means whenever we detect a violation, or we're going to build a case, that we conduct the investigation into that criminal offense as well. So we do the investigations as well as the patrol. And it could be, like I said, of hunting, fishing. We investigate all hunting incidents. That's all injuries or fatalities that occur while hunting. We also inspect taxidermists, meat processors, and wildlife service agents. And then kind of switching gears over to the boating side of the house. We are the state's law enforcement authority on boating. We enforce all boating laws. So just like there's laws of the road, traffic laws, which a state trooper does on the road, we enforce all the boating laws on the water. And so that's on your lakes, rivers, and down east on the coast. And so we investigate boating incidents. Once again, it's like a car wreck. It's like a boat crash. We investigate those. And enforcement of, just like a DWI, we enforce BWIs, which is boating while impaired. Careless and reckless on a boat. Basically, just think of all the same things that a state trooper would do, enforcing those traffic laws, motor vehicle laws. We're enforcing those laws, but on the water. So that's our job as well. So you think about this time of year, we're on the lake a lot. I'm assigned to Lake James, just down the road here. On the weekends when the weather's nice, spending majority of the time on the water and conducting patrols on the water. So lastly there, let me address this real quick. So it's common situations that we encounter. So there's a few that maybe aren't so common, but I wanted to highlight what we do because we're so unique and universal, and the skills that we possess and the resources that we provide. A lot of times we're called down to assist with hurricanes. When the hurricane comes, we're called. We're part of the emergency response for that. So we'll take our boats down to the coast and help search and rescue and look for people. Our officers, will go down and assist with those operations and rescuing folks off the top of houses, and that's because we have the boats to take down there and use that resource. Myself personally, I've been called to assist with the wildfires that we had up here 3 years ago. So, we're not firefighters, but, we're called in to assist, because it's a public safety issue. We're called in to assist with the securing the areas during the wildfires. Let's see. All right. Yeah. So missing persons and search and rescues. So, just a couple weeks ago, I'm out on patrol, heard on the county radio that there was a missing child. They're looking for this child in the woods who had been missing for several hours. So stop and get in on that and assist them in searching for that missing child. That's pretty common. I've recently, in the past month, I'm not sure what the deal is, but I've assisted on numerous manhunts in the past couple of weeks, just where, say there was a hit and run accident where someone was injured and the person driving the car that was involved in the accident fled on foot into the woods. So, if I'm in the area, I'll ask if they need assistance and they'll request my assistance. And us used to being in the woods and working outdoors, we may go and assist with that as well. A lot of times, if we get reports, especially on the National Forest, working with the U.S. Forest Service law enforcement officers, we'll get reports of suspicious activity. We'll go out and investigate potential illegal marijuana cultivation, marijuana grows. I've assisted on a few of those. And like I said, you understand this is not an everyday thing, but these are just things that we may encounter during the course of our duties on a daily basis. First and foremost, obviously, we're first responders, whether it be EMS, I am an EMT, or whether it be fire. Like I said, we're not responding to, or we're not being dispatched to these medical events or fire events, but we are first responders. If you're out in the course of your daily patrol, you're conducting your hunting, fishing, boating, trapping duties, you come across a car accident or a house on fire, we are first responders. We're trained to take action in the situation. So, you could be out just checking some trout fishing, come upon a car wreck, and you have to render medical aid. So that's part of this job, which is the last question I'll get to here. But, we have a lot of different things that we do on a daily basis. And I just, I could give you several examples, but this was literally a couple of days ago. I had a report of an illegal dump site where somebody had filled up a truck bed full of trash and just dumped it all on the side of the road on our game lands. So I investigated that as illegal dump site littering, which is something we take very seriously. Littering affects not only the public, but the environment, habitat, the wildlife, the fisheries, the water. So littering is something we take serious. From the littering call, I went to the report of illegal fish traps, where someone was illegally netting fish. From that one, I got a report of someone that they had claimed that they had a hawk, like in a foothold trap on a post. And obviously that's a trapping issue, but a hawk is also a raptor, which is a protected species. So I had to look into that, investigate it. After that, I went and issued a depredation permit for deer to someone who had agriculture and needed a depredation permit to lawfully harvest some of those deer as part of the land management. And then from there, I went to a nuisance bear call. So that was literally just a couple of days ago. You can see how you go from one thing to the other, and lots of different things going on in one day. All right, so last question there. I'm excited about this one because I'm passionate about what I do. It says, what do you enjoy most about working for North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission? And that is the diversity of our job. So our duties vary from day to day, so it's always changing, right? There's always something different to work, and it changes with the season. So right now we're working boating and some fishing, and come fall time, we're going to switch gears into hunting. Fall and winter, we're working a lot of hunting, some fishing as well, some boating as well. But then we kind of switch gears back into spring is turkey hunting, into trout fishing, and then summertime rolls around, we're moving back into working boating. So it's constantly changing, and that's what I tell folks. Whereas I'm not knocking any other police, sheriff, state highway patrol, nothing like that. I love those officers, but with their job, it's you're assigned to a specific area, whether a city, a town, a county, or interstate, and they're going to be doing a lot of the same stuff, whether it's responding to 911 hangups, alarm calls, welfare checks, traffic accidents. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not taking away from the job that they do, and they do a great job at it, have a very important job. I love all those officers. But our job changes on a daily basis. So, whether it's hunting, fishing, boating, trapping, or throw in any of the plethora of things, wildfires, hurricanes. I didn't mention earlier, but as you can see down there in that bottom picture, we have an airplane. We fly aerial patrols for surveillance and conduct, air operations as well. So, you can literally go from being riding around in an airplane to 2 hours later riding around on your boat, to 2 hours later riding around on your ATV, and it could go from fishing to a manhunt to talking at a school to some kids, and that's all in the course of the day. So that's what's exciting about this job to me, is each day is different. You really truly don't know, what each day is going to hold. It could be anything. So the next thing I love about this job is the freedom and independence of it. And the reason why I say that is, and I'll explain to you, we have a lot of autonomy as officers in the way that we work. So, for example, I don't have an office. This is, the fish hatchery where I'm at now, where we raise trout, to stock the streams. But I don't have an office. We have a home office, or our office is our trucks, a mobile office, meaning I don't have to go there every single day and check in. And there is a flip side of that. Sometimes I need a desk to sit down at and spread all my stuff out and do some admin paperwork. But having that freedom and independence is great, because it allows us to go out and do our jobs, and you're not necessarily having to check in, and you're being told where to go at what time, stuff like that. So another thing, for example, we get to make our own schedules, which means you have to work a certain amount of hours per week, per month, as required by law. But we make our schedules based upon the activity that's going on that time of year. So, you understand, during the hunt season, we may work a lot of early shifts, whereas this time of year, the day is longer. We may work a lot of evening shifts. And at the same time, if I need to, say if I'm scheduled a morning shift today, but something comes up, I get a report, this is spotlight going on tonight, change my schedule, work tonight. It's just that easy. We change our schedule. We're flexible based upon the activity. We get to determine our patrol activity on a daily basis. That's part of learning your county or your patrol area and knowing where you need to go. Yes, we rely upon reports from the public, being our eyes and ears, letting us know what's going on, but getting out there on foot, in the plane, on the boat, on the four-wheeler, learning your area, knowing where the activity is. Like, hey, I need to go here to patrol hunting. I need to go here to patrol fishing. But that's up to us as officers to determine what patrol activity or what activity, regulated activity, takes place where within your county, and you get to establish your patrol. The flip side to that is, that doesn't always work out for everyone. So in this job, you have to be highly accountable. With all that freedom and independence, sometimes it's a bad thing for some people, because they're like, I'm waiting on someone to tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And they don't know what to do. So they could just find themselves not doing anything. But you have to be self-motivated and take that initiative. But our core values in the law enforcement division is professional, fair, dedicated, integrity, and trustworthy. And part of that trust and responsibility comes from our agency that gives us these resources like boats. Maybe assign 1 or 2, possibly 3 boats, an ATV. You have a patrol truck, a take-home vehicle. So there's a lot of trust and responsibility that not only the agency puts in you, but the public puts in you. The citizens that they put in you as an officer. in serving the public and the wildlife in this state. So that's why I love what I do, and the most important thing to me is that you have fun doing it. You know, I'm professional, I'm fair, I'm dedicated to the job, and at the end of the day, I have fun doing it, and that's why I love what I do. So. All right, recruitment and training. So recent changes requiring a bachelor's degree to apply, or a combination of education and experience. And basically, to put it in a nutshell for you, recognizing the value of a higher education is what justified a salary increase. And that is what brought upon the change that required the minimum education requirement of a bachelor's degree. Preferred knowledge of North Carolina fish and wildlife is certainly going to help you out a lot. It's going to make the job easier if you're already familiar with, you know, hunting, fishing, boating, and trapping. And if, say, you fish a lot, but you don't hunt a lot, or you boat a lot, but you don't trap a lot, you know, that's okay. You will learn that stuff. But, you know, I joke with people, like, for those of you that hunt, like a mature adult male turkey is called a tom. So if somebody says that, you know, they killed a tom, you know, like, you're not gonna be like, you killed who? You know, so, or
You would understand.
right, you understand that. Or like a juvenile or younger male turkey is called a jake, right? So you have to understand like a tom and a jake, and your familiarity with these things, and that's certainly going to help you. Training standards and the North Carolina Justice Academy, that's where our basic school is held at in Salemburg. There's, after the 28-week basic training academy as a recruit, when you graduate successfully, you'll have 6 months of on-the-job field training prior to your first permanent assignment, your first duty station. Then continued annual in-service trainings, which we have annually, whether it be driving, combatives, firearms, as well as professional development and retention. So that means throughout your career, if you so choose to do so, you know, you have the opportunity to advance yourself professionally. Like, just for an example with me, I'm now a certified law enforcement instructor in multiple disciplines. You know, joined the agency's honor guard. You know, there's different, you know, aspects of this job where you can better yourself, both professionally and personally, you know, that we offer. And diversity and inclusion, especially now. We're diversifying this agency in order to better serve the public and in order to better serve the citizens of this state, and as well as, you know, we are wildlife law enforcement officers, and we are there to protect the wildlife, but we're also there to protect those who benefit and enjoy our state's wildlife resources. So as you can see down here at the bottom, that's our mission statement. It says the mission of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission Law Enforcement Division is to conserve wildlife resources, promote safe, responsible boating, and provide public safety through both proactive law enforcement and the instruction of quality education. So that's our mission statement. That's what we're about here. That is the driving core of what we do. And I mentioned earlier with our core values of professionalism, fairness, dedication, integrity, and trustworthiness. That is all incorporated into our recruitment and our training and what we do as a law enforcement agency, and that's what we do as a conservation agency for the state of North Carolina. And if you see down there at the bottom, it says application closes June 26, which is in 3 days, but really it's 3:30 now. So clock's ticking. If you haven't already applied, if you're interested in applying, I'd encourage you to go on to the website and apply through, I think it's nc.gov/jobs, and then it takes you to government jobs like careers/North Carolina.
You shared that link as well in the chat.
Right, great. So you share that link as well. Oh, one thing I put a note at the bottom, long application process. It's not to discourage you, but just kind of know what's coming up front. After you apply, if you are selected based upon your application packet. Next will be the POPAT, the physical test, a reading test, psychological eval, swimming test, a very thorough comprehensive background check, a series of panel interviews. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of hoops to jump through. And that whole process takes about, I'd say, approximately 6 months from beginning to end. And one thing to keep in mind is you must be willing to move anywhere within the state of North Carolina. And that's something that that keeps a lot of people from applying. I get questions all the time. They're like, well, I'm from Boone and I only want to work in Boone. I'm like, well, it's not going to happen. It may happen, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years, but you're not going to apply and get sent straight to where you want to go. A lot of times people just want to go and go straight back home and work the county that they're from, that they're born and raised in. And that may be a possibility, at some point in the future within your career, but just know that you're more than likely not going to get to go immediately back to your home county. Like I said, you may, but you must be willing, at least initially, to go anywhere within the state of North Carolina. And I don't want that to discourage anyone. I would highly encourage, if you were born in the mountains, go to the coast. If you're born on the coast, go to the mountains, or even the Piedmont. You may find something you love. You love working that area, and lots of great opportunities and experiences out there. And from my experience, I've never worked in Lee County, where I'm from, and I've always worked counties that I didn't grow up there. I was not from there, but I have worked with people who went back to their home county. And there are pluses and minuses. You get to, people in the community already know you. So that could be a positive thing. But keep in mind, that could also be a negative thing. It make your job even more difficult because you're having to take a law enforcement action against friends, family members, people you may go to church with, people that you went to high school with, your neighbor. So that could be more difficult. But that could also prove beneficial in helping, relationships and, intel, stuff like that. So there's a flip side to both. So, if you're like, well, I don't want to do it now because I can't go back home, just keep in mind, going back home is not always the best thing. You may go back home eventually in your career, or you may go back there and you're like, man, I loved it when I lived here, but now that I'm a law enforcement officer, it's not the same. So that's not to discourage you from applying. You may be able to go back home eventually, but just know that at least initially, you must be willing to move anywhere in the state. Okay, so on this one, I'll just run through these. Says volunteer to enhance your resume. Okay, so any way that you can better yourself or better market yourself as a potential candidate is only going to help you in such a competitive career field. And once again, not to discourage anyone, but at times we've had up to 1 to 2, I think approximately 3,000 applicants for maybe only 15 to 20 positions. And it has been that high in the past. So you need to find ways to better yourself in addition to your minimum requirements. That's not to say, oh, I have a bachelor's degree, I'm in. It's think of ways to enhance your resume, whether it's volunteering in different aspects of natural resources or law enforcement or anything that can get you that experience within your desired career field, because that stuff's only going to help. Whether you're volunteering or working or having internships at museums, nature centers, state parks, getting up with our wildlife management or wildlife biologists doing bird counts or stocking, fish stocking, or wild turkey surveys, or just anything at all, or going and helping to work on some of our boat ramps, with those folks. That stuff's only going to help you, because the more people who know who you are, know your face, know your name, that's going to help you. And they're going to look at this and say, oh, this person's done a lot of work, whether it's at a museum, whether it's with us, state parks, national forests. And that's part of the networking that's super, super, super important, not only in game warden work, but in law enforcement and in all aspects of the career field, is getting out and networking, meeting people so they can put a face for the name, and getting business cards. I've got, not to brag on myself, I've still got from when I was coming up through college, a binder that's got hundreds of business cards in it. And periodically I'd email those people or call them, just let them know what was going on. That way, at least if you ever do apply for a job or you need something, you're looking for a resource, they're like, who is this person I've never talked to before? At least they know, oh, that's Jared. I remember, I met him that one time at a conference where he was volunteering with us. Also, ride-alongs. I'd encourage ride-alongs with your local law enforcement, the sheriff's office, police department, highway patrol. You can do ride-alongs with us as long as you're older than 18 years old. And internships, exploring internships, like I talked about earlier, that Pathways program. Look at internships through the state of North Carolina as well. North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, we offer internships as well for college students, and other agencies, state parks. Just look at those opportunities that are out there, explore what opportunities are out there, and you really have to be aggressive, like I said, in your networking and marketing yourself and making yourself more competitive in that job field. And lastly, if you wanted to kind of cover that section.
Laura has shared over in the chat where you can schedule an appointment with some of the career coaches. We had JP, our career coach of the Beaver College of Health and Exercise Science. We know that that's a lot of our recreation management students are housed within that college. You can schedule an appointment with her. Laura Pell over the College of Arts and Science. So a lot of our criminal justice students, our biology, our environmental science students, whether or not it's for a wildlife law enforcement type of career or non-law enforcement career in wildlife management, conservation, all of these types of agencies that Jared talked about that have, Officer Thompson, talked about it's very important that you meet with your career counselors. We also had Geraldine Mitchell, who's over the College of Fine and Applied Arts, had also joined us earlier today. It is very important that you get connected with them. They can help review your resume, help give you tips on networking, where to start, where to go, how to interact with employers, how to go about looking for these opportunities. Definitely utilize your AppState faculty who have years of experience and are very knowledgeable about what these types of agencies are looking for, what recent graduates should be doing, what current students should be doing to start their journey. It's not necessarily after you graduate that you need to start this process. You can be doing this now. So definitely advocate that. And we just wanted to summarize, Jared, Officer Thompson, excuse me, cover a few more of these points.
Real quick, this is our last slide here before we open up for some questions. It says, if you're a recent graduate or you say you're currently still in school, but you're going to be graduating with your degree prior to the start of our basic training school, which would start in, I don't know what it is. Sorry if I mess it up. I think it's in either January or February time frame. But it says 20 years old prior to the state law enforcement exam, meaning you have to be 21 years old to carry a firearm on duty. Bachelor's degree or equivalent experience or equivalent education experience prior to the start of the training. Pass the modified police officer's physical agility test. Pretty sure it's a agility test. But you have to pass that as part of the application process. Meet your background, medical, and psychological requirements. Complete a 28-week basic training academy at Salemburg at the North Carolina Justice Academy. And for this part, I just put a note. It's without spoiling all the fun for everyone. I can't give away all the secrets, but just know that it's very rigorous PT program. It's ran paramilitary style, like basic training, which means you have PT early in the morning, sometimes more than that, but very heavy on PT. So just know that, preparing yourself physically coming in. But we're also going to be doing the basic law enforcement training, just like you would get for sheriff's office or police or highway patrol. That's your basic as required by North Carolina Criminal Justice Training and Standards. That's going to cover, your law or legal background, combatives, driving, firearms, in addition to our own game warden specific academy, in which we teach you the game warden aspect of the job as well. So that's 28 weeks there, and you'll be living at the Justice Academy in Salemburg. And afterwards, you complete 6 months on the job field training. And like I said, it could be anywhere across the state of North Carolina. And application closes June 26, 2020. So that's in a few days, about 2.5 days now. Once again, just to reiterate, great job. I love what I do. Great agency to work for. In addition to these other agencies that I already mentioned, I have experience in working with all of them throughout my career. And also great agencies to work for. But please, I encourage everyone to just explore the opportunities that are out there, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's just a ride along or an internship, or you're actually looking at possible career paths. Look at the opportunities that are out there. I'd be more than happy to come speak to anyone, whether it be on the phone or via email. Like I said, I'm passionate about what I do, and I am passionate about recruiting, qualified and diverse candidates from all over, from the public, but especially from Appalachian State, which is my alma mater. Super proud to be an AppState alumni. So please, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me. Don't hesitate. I think if Mr. McGuire is still on here, I've already spoken with him via email. Yeah, great job. I love what I do. So open it up now to any questions. If you'd like to, type them in the chat box there, and then I'll address what I can.
There's a few of us. If anybody wants to come off of mute and ask anything, I think that would be fine as well too. Got JP, Laura, Samuel still with us.
Quick question for either you, Officer Thompson, or anyone in the Career and Development program at AppState. I'm a rising junior. I'm also in the ROTC program, so my summers are typically pretty busy. I'm just trying to square away a criminal justice internship for my senior year, which would be like the 2020 or 2021 to 2022 school year, either in the fall or spring. And you kind of touched on it in the last slide about stuff we should be doing to look for internships. Any kind of additional like training or kind of preparation we should be doing? I can go to these links and email these people, but like stuff that I can be doing personally to prepare myself for and make myself look more hireable for just an internship position.
Well, I can answer the like sort of finding some of these really cool internships. Really maximize your LinkedIn profile. Make sure that you're connecting, connect with Cato and Jared, because who's going to be in Jared's LinkedIn? Probably other wildlife officers, right? So you want to start looking at that. Also, you want to start looking at other people's LinkedIn profiles with your same degree. Like, look for people who graduated about 5 years ago. Where did they intern? Internship, if they've interned there before, most likely you can intern there again. And sometimes people just kind of forget, if it was a friend of a friend that they helped get an internship, well, maybe they would like another student. They just don't know how to go about doing that. So you got to be kind of creative about sort of thinking outside of the box and looking for some of those opportunities, because they're not all going to be posted in Handshake, right? So you have to kind of think about the people that you know who could kind of connect you. I had the best example I could give. I had a student in healthcare sciences who wanted to work with an orthopedic, replacement limbs. I don't know what that's called. I should know this. I'm in the Beaver College of Health Sciences. Anyway, his best friend's girlfriend's father worked for a company, and he got an internship through there. He didn't even know the girl, but she talked to her dad because they knew a mutual person. He got a great internship. So you got to kind of maximize that sort of stuff. As far as experience, I would say volunteer with the local, systems, the police, do ride-alongs, volunteer with any sort of, if you want to do wildlife stuff, volunteer on any sort of parkway projects. Just get out there and show that you're involved in the community.
Officer Thompson,
Working with the public.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the Wildlife Commission, they also have an internship program. It's not typically posted through Handshake. However, a lot of times, right around January, I do know that there will be a large push for the state internships. There's a lot of them that are posted, say, with the North Carolina Museum of Natural Science. I worked there for a while, and we had a lot of volunteers and internship programs through there. That is also a state agency with North Carolina. The Wildlife Commission hires interns as well too. They also have events that they put on. They have assisted hunts for people with varying disabilities. I believe you all take volunteers to help with those days, those events, hunter safety tournaments that happen. So the Wildlife Commission, on their own website will have opportunities for volunteering. I don't know how much they talk about their internships, but if you go to the NC State or North Carolina or state of North Carolina internship site, they should talk about the list of agencies that partner with them for those internship opportunities. So that would be a good place to start.
So one thing I'll say, just to echo what Jennifer said, is I could not agree with her anymore. I couldn't stress anymore. Just because, so you look at a list of internship opportunities and it says like CMPD, like Charlotte Meck Police Department, or like Winston-Salem Police Department, or, I'm making these up, or like Raleigh Police Department, and you're like, okay, that's all it's on there. Do not be afraid to reach out to any agency that you have an interest in. And I mean, I'm not trying to make it sound like over glorified or anything, but if you have a dream, even like something that you would think would be crazy or something across the nation, like they're never going to accept me, just reach out and ask, because that's the way it was with me at U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I was like, it's a federal law enforcement agency under the Department of Interior. It's up around D.C. I don't know anybody up there. I don't know the area. No chance. But you'd be surprised, just because something's not on a list, but you have an interest in doing that, by all means, research and reach out, communicate with those people. Like I said, I put lots of agencies on there, but I know folks that they became they did internships with the U.S. Secret Service. They did internships with CIA. Like, I mean, granted, you're not going to be out like a super spy or nothing like that, but those opportunities are out there. They are available, but it's just a matter of reaching out. So definitely look for something that you're truly interested in and just go for it. And on the flip side, we were talking about volunteering just for experience. I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to volunteer. It's unpaid. They don't want to volunteer their free time because they're not getting paid. But sometimes you're going to have to do things like that, volunteering or provide a service just to get experience, because the value of the networking and the value of the relationships and the experience you get in those situations are going to be much more than any money you could have made doing that same work. So
70% of people get jobs through people they know.
That's right.
The same should apply to internships most likely too.
Yeah. Definitely.
Utilize us too, because we know about some of these cool things. So if you're in contact with us and you're paying attention to what we're putting out, you'll see the application for the North Carolina internship program go out when we send it out. But you have to kind of make sure you read the emails and stuff, because we can't email you individually every time something good comes up, but we can definitely put out the big notices and stuff, and just stay on pay attention to what's going on in Handshake.
Right. And don't be, like I said, don't be discouraged if you don't hear back, or even if you get a no. The worst they're going to say is no. You're like, okay, thanks. But just know that, people aren't going to come asking you to be an intern. They're not going to be like, oh, please be an intern for us. So if you want to do it, then reach out to them and say, hey, I'm very interested. I'm passionate about this. This is what I want to do. And people will recognize that, and they appreciate that. So like I said, if you've got somebody in mind, reach out to them for sure.
Yeah, I always tell my students with a job search is pick 10 places that you think that would be the most awesome places to work.
Yep.
You know, just the 10 organizations that you think with your values and the things that you hold important, what is their mission? You know, because if it's a job that doesn't speak to you in your heart, you're not going to like it, right? So if you start researching those companies and start following them on social media, you'll also know when they're doing special things or certain promotions, and you'll start to understand, like, you'll know, it'll connect you with some of the other people in the organization and some alumni who can also help sort of pave those paths for you.
Yeah, and like I said, that one federal wildlife officer with Fish and Wildlife that I met, he was an AppState alumni. That was that connection immediately. You know, that's what helped me get my foot in the door. And from there, like I said, you got to market yourself and, you know, make sure they put a face with the name. And no better way to do that. I'm a huge supporter of internships because, you know, I know people are like, I had an internship and I sat at the police department all day, like at a desk. I'm like, that was your fault. You know, you should have got out there and been like, hey, let me get in on everything. You know, be active, be involved, you know, and you'll be surprised at what they let you do.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. They'll be surprised if they feel like you're really interested and you're into it and you're motivated. They will share it with you. If they don't think you're there to do anything but pass time, they don't have time to keep you busy.
Yep.
But if you show yourself motivated and keep yourself busy and they're interested in things and learning things, they'll give you more. And so it really is, it's like a very much what you put into it.
Yes.
So, and if you need help, just make an appointment with one of us. I don't know what school you're in. Which school are you in, Samuel?
Arts and sciences.
You're in arts and sciences. So you belong to Miss Laura. she's below you on our video. But make an appointment. And if you can't find one because Laura's busy as well, you make one with me. You can shoot me an email. But we can help you with all this stuff. And you're doing it early enough too, which is smart.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I was going to say, if you're a rising junior, so you're not going to have your degree, you know, in time for this school, then by all means, keep an eye out. If this is something you're interested in, keep an eye out for job announcements and vacancies in the future, say in 2021, 2022, 2023, and just keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, what I also tell people is that if the job's not open, then don't just sit around and be stagnant. You know, like, oh, I'm waiting on my dream job. Like, don't do that. You know, fill that time with meaningful experience. So whether that means, what if you do work at your, you know, your local police department, just to have you're a reserve or auxiliary officer or a reserve deputy, you know, just to get that law enforcement experience, or, you know, work at a state park, you know, in the meantime, because, you know, if you graduated in 2021 and the next school wasn't until 2023, and they're like, well, what did you do for 2 years? You're like, oh, I've just been waiting on this job, you know. So continue to stay active and relevant and engaged and involved.
And you've had some officers that have laterally moved from a non-law enforcement role, say working in fisheries or wildlife management, that have come into a law enforcement role, or say some NC Park rangers have laterally moved into being a wildlife officer and going through your training program. I personally, from being at home with him and seeing with recruitment, it's not typically a yearly thing that it's not this time every year will they post a job. It might be as the need is there, as officers begin to retire within the state, folks move, maybe new positions become available, the size of a county, the population. I don't know if the census has anything to do with that, but by citizen count, that might be an increased need to have another officer in that area. So with the Wildlife Commission, they haven't consistently posted same time every year. It's been as the need is there, and say they have approximately 15 to 20 openings that they foresee. Will they then fly another trainee role and recruit for the next school? So just from my personal experience of being around and exposed to this agency, that's what I've seen a lot. So
and I have a very close friend of mine that was a deputy. He's now one of our law enforcement pilots. I think he was a deputy for 12 years, ranked as a sheriff's deputy, and he had applied like I think 5 or 6 times before he got on, you know, over his whole entire law enforcement career. And it was just a matter of for whatever reason, he didn't get in, so he applied again, continued to work, applied it, but now he's like I said, he's one of our law enforcement pilots, and it's because what he's always wanted to do. Just being perseverant, having that perseverance and continuing to apply, and keeping an eye on when those vacancies arise.
And this application process might look different because this is the first time that the agency is requiring a minimum of a bachelor's degree or equivalent amount of experience, like say military experience, to be able to apply. So that application field might look very different now. The agency definitely is learning and sees and values officers that have been in experiences in classroom settings, engaged in dialogue with diversity, inclusion, new and different law enforcement types of methods and integration. So I think that valuing a bachelor's degree and that the agency sees that and they're requiring it as just a minimum to apply is a really, really great thing. Yeah, well.
Any other questions from, I think there's like 5 of us now. So.
And we've been at this like an hour and 45 minutes.
I had no idea it was going to take this long. But I'm like long-winded when I get to talking. So.
That's all right. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. Well, I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks y'all so much for this. This is really awesome.
Yeah.
I learned a lot too.
Yep. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Bye.
We'll go ahead and log off. Thank you all for
Thank
joining
you.
us. It was awesome. Maybe we can do this again sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.